So everyone's on social media pretending that they know what romance is. Everyone's doing couples goals. Everyone's saying love doesn't exist anymore. Everyone's saying romance doesn't exist anymore. Some people are saying, God, when I see what you do for others, when will it be my turn? Romance is dead, in a sense. Let me not say romance is dead, but I think people don't know what romance really is. I think people have it twisted. They have a weird view of what love is, what it really is. And I think a lot of people think they have a fairy tale ending and then realize that there's work to do. Or some people think they know what love is, but it's not that. It's not all glitz and glamour. It is boring. It isn't something that everyone looks at you and thinks, yeah, that's the fairy tale ending. It isn't a fairy tale ending, and that's not real life. But as society has progressed, as things have gone on, everyone, of course, always wants to think that the fairy tale is the way that the story ends, and it's not. I was talking to someone the other day about love. Like, does real love exist? Do people know what love really is in the relationship term, marriage, all of that kind of stuff? And I was saying that I think a lot of people have been sold a dream about what romance is, what it entails, what relationship entails, and what it actually means. So I'm sure everyone's always heard of the 5 love languages. I think it was developed by someone, I think Dr. Chapman, and it usually goes into the 5 ways in which people display love, receive love, and your love language. So the five love languages, I've actually got them here. Words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch. So words of affirmation would be you saying words like you love someone, or saying affirming words, I'm proud of you, all that kind of stuff, where you're literally saying uplifting words to somebody. Somebody may see that as love. Somebody may see that as, yes, somebody is uplifting me with their words. They're saying nice things to me. They're affirming the feelings they have for me vocally. Some people really like that. Some people love that. That's how they love. They grow up in a household where if you love someone, that's what you say. You say you love them. Then you've got people that do acts of service. So acts of service would be you actually doing actions or doing things for somebody. So this could be, I saw it a lot growing up, where people would cook for their significant other, or they would do actions, gestures, acts of service where they serve the person they love, because that's how they grow up. That's how they show love. So this could be someone making a packed lunch for their significant other going to work. This could be somebody knitting a sweater for someone that they know that somebody likes. There's a whole myriad of things. Then you have things like physical touch. So these are the people that love hugs, kissing, holding hands. And then you have also quality time, which is another one of the love languages. So this is where you will go on walks, where it will just be you and the person you love, where you would hold hands and it's just you two and no one else. It's pure undivided attention. It is where you're able to just switch off a phone and just be lost in conversation during a dinner date. And it's just the two of you. You're giving your full quality, undivided attention, and you're having a conversation, and there's no distractions or things getting in the way. Other one is gifts. So receiving gifts. So this is where somebody really likes to get gifts. They buy gifts, no matter how small, no matter how big. This is where somebody will buy you gifts, and that's how they show love. So this could be somebody, they could buy you something from WH Smith that could be really small. And they said, I saw this, I thought of you, I thought you might like this. This is a gift. So we've all heard of these 5 love languages and the way that some people love, and how you should always meet someone else's love language. So if somebody's physical touch, you need to give them physical touch. If somebody's receiving gifts, you kind of reciprocate and kind of love them in the way that they understand and that makes sense. Within reason, you want to do that. But 5 love languages are not the end all be all. And I think in this day and age, with social media, society, all of this kind of stuff, real love is not like that. I think love is responsibility. Love can be boring. Love is not always this thing where it's a fairy tale ending. And the reason I say that is because when I was speaking to my friend about this, we were saying like how nowadays some people are finding it hard to find love, because it's like no one really knows what love is. No one's really willing to really understand what it is, what it takes, and actually think further ahead. So they were saying like how nowadays it's like always everyone wants this social media love where it's the room full of roses, the picture perfect Valentine's Day, birthday, anniversary, all of this kind of stuff. It's these grandiose gifts, these grandiose kind of declarations of love. But then it's like that's not reality for the general population. You can't be doing these well, depending on how you love, fine, but it's not that. I don't think it's that, because you always have to remember, like, life is not a movie all the time. Life is not a fairy tale all the time. And I think it always goes back to when we were younger. Stories like Cinderella, fairy tales, where it's, you see a woman, a young girl that is not, she's not rich or whatever, she's being mistreated. She meets her prince, who of course has he's royalty, he has wealth, he has resources, he loves her for her, they get together and they live happily ever after. And from a young age, you always read stories like this, we always read fairy tales, and as you grow up, you read other stories and stuff. But from a very young age, these stories are put into your head where it's like such and such, a man or woman meets whoever, the man is a prince or whatever, they meet, da 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 da, then it's always ending happily ever after. That's not real life. If you're exposed to that over and over again, romance films, novels, all this kind of stuff, you always come to a point where you believe that this is love. Love is getting chosen. Love is finding the person, and then once you've got them, that's it. But that's not the case. That's not real, because that's only the beginning. Finding the person's only the beginning. I would have loved for them to do like a grown-up version of Cinderella, where we see the after, not the happily ever after, but the after. What happens now? Prince Charming gonna get her another glass slipper for the anniversary. She's gonna be like, I've got glass slippers. You need, get something else. Like, when it gets tough, what are you gonna do? What's life like? Cinderella has a mortgage. These are the type of things that you kind of, when you get older, you think of and go, it's not happily ever after. Finding the person you love is not the end all, be all, happily ever after. Yes, it's all a life of bliss. That's not reality. But from a young age, sometimes some people buy into it. They buy into the novel, they buy into the fairy tale, and they believe that love should be this whole grandiose, blissful dream that is, there's no bad times, there's no issues, there's no struggle, there's no situations where you have to endure, because life is just lifing. And I think that's the problem with love nowadays, is romance nowadays, is because everything is so commercialized, everything is so sensationalized, everything is just blown out of proportion to make it this big thing, when that's not the case. It's not all roses, it's not all nice, it's not all this beautiful thing all the time. There is problems, there's issues, there's things you have to work through. It can be boring, it can be mundane, it's life, but we never think of it that way. And it's like, if we don't have a realistic view of love, of the world, of relationships, of life, then how are you going to be able to stand up and endure when it's time to endure? Because your paradigm, what you think is reality is not reality. So me and my friend, we were talking, we were just saying, and I was telling him, I said, to be honest, it's about finding somebody that you can do life with. God willing is a God selected person. You're both strong in your faith and all that kind of stuff or whatever. And you have a realistic view of what love is. And you actually have conversations about things that are deal breakers. Because I think as well, that's a big thing. Like, you will see situations where people can get together and it's just a feeling. Oh yes, I love you, you love me, let's get together. And then you see situations where people can get together and then a massive deal breaker can come up when they're in too deep. So you can see a situation where two people can get together, it's all nice and feelings and whatever. Then you can get a situation where now you could be married or whatever, and then the person is saying, I don't want kids. And the other person says, I really want kids. And it's like, how did you two get so far down the line? And that was never discussed, because you were caught up in the feelings. And feelings are good, feelings are real, but feelings change like the wind. Feelings are not consistent. They're not forever. It's not every single second you're going to feel that way. So, and I was explaining to this person, my friend, I was saying, I always look at love in a different way, because I always look at it you got to look at the other loves. So you got to think of it first. Love of your parent. Like, before you find anyone to love you, before you realize what love is, you learn love from your parents. So the way fathers would treat their daughters, the way mums would treat their sons, and all of that kind of stuff. You learn love first from your parents. So first off, how your parents are, like the example they set with how they love, can also seep into you. So that's where maybe the 5 love languages can come from. If you were raised in a household with words of affirmation, the likelihood is that's how you're going to receive love. That's how you're going to want to communicate love, because that's what you're brought up in. That's what was shown to you. Therefore, that's what you adopt. But then at the same time as well, with your parents, you can also see the realities of love, because it's not every day that your mum or dad would have been happy with what you've done. It's not every day they're gonna be like, oh yes, oh son, I love you. Or daughter, I love you. There's days where you might have done something really crazy. You might have smashed the TV. You might have, I don't know, done some crazy stuff. You might have hit their car. You would have done something crazy. And in that moment, it weren't all, oh yeah, love and roses. It weren't all hugs and cuddles. It was, you've done something crazy. You also saw the struggles. So depending on your background, how you came up, your parents, you might have seen them struggle. You might have seen them have to be a parent when resources were low, when emotions were running high and they weren't feeling good. You saw that. So it's like, love is a responsibility. It's a job that you choose to do when you look at it through that lens, because it's not every parent that always felt good having to sacrifice things or go through things or have to turn up, but you do it. It's the job of a parent to do those type of things. But you also see that sometimes it's not all nice. You don't always feel the same way every day. There would be times as you're growing up, going through puberty and stuff like that, where you might want to be rebellious and do things you're not supposed to do, and your parent will step in and say, hey, this ain't right. This is the right way to do things. You shouldn't be doing this. And in that moment, you weren't trying to be all lovey-dovey at that moment. You weren't all nice. So it's like, if your own parents that gave birth to you, loved you, changed your nappies, did all these things for you, if your own parents aren't always consistent in that feeling in the moment, why do you think you're now going to go and get with somebody that has been raised in a completely different, maybe a different background to you, a completely different lifestyle, whatever, or someone that's just lived a life different to yours? What makes you think you're going to get with this person and then all of a sudden it's going to be a romance dream, a romance novel, 24-hour a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life? That's not reality, because reality has never been that. Even with your friends. If you have friends, it's not every time you're going to be all lovey-dovey or like, yes, I love my friend. There could be times where you may argue. There could be times where there could be life is affecting them and they could be lashing out. There's just times where your emotions are not always the same. You don't always feel the same about somebody every single day. It's not reality. It doesn't make sense. Even with your family, like siblings. You see sometimes growing up where siblings fight, where this is your brother, your sister, you love them, but there's times they might annoy you. There's times you may fight. And as you grow up, you learn how to navigate that, how to fight, say what you want to say, reconcile, and go forward. So it's like, yeah, you've got all these things, all these lessons, all these examples, all these relationships, all these different types of love for different people. And the one thing that's always consistent is your emotions change by the minute. You love each other. That's my mum, my dad, my brother, my sister, whatever, my friends. But there's work that has to be done. Like, even prime example would be with your friends. There's times where you have to, maybe one of your friends moves further away, maybe life changes for them, they get children. It can happen with siblings, whatever. And then you have to make a real effort to keep in contact, keep the relationship alive, check in, and all of that kind of stuff. There's times where things affect people and your feelings towards them is not going to be the same. So when you look at all these things together, the one point you bring out, or the couple of points you bring out, is that feelings are changed like the wind. Depending on the situation, depending on the day, depending on what is affecting everyone, it is not that. You're not just going to be feeling lovey-dovey every day. So if it's like that with people, your family, your mum and dad that have, if you look at it properly, they've probably done the most for you out of anyone. If it's not like that with your mum and dad, why do some people think it's going to be like that for your spouse, for someone you love? Why do you think it's going to be a fever dream where everything is bliss and everything is no struggle, no nothing? Why do we think that is? It's because some people don't know what love is, or they forget. They're not looking around because it just doesn't make sense. And I think this is a real issue because now with social media is good, but it always leads to people and messages, even media as well, just normal media, films, all this kind of stuff, romance films where we always see the beginning. We always see the courting, we always see the dating, we always see the romance, we always see the films where the couple think they love each other, then the guy has to kind of, I don't know, make a proclamation that he loves her and he wants to be with her in front of people, and then they get together and it's all happy ending and everyone's like, yeah. We never see, or we rarely see the continuation of that. We rarely see the life. We rarely see, okay, now it's the deep part. Well, now it's where things actually get tough. Because if you had to see that constantly, or the story started from there, it don't always look fun. It's not always the greatest thing, because life is life, humans are humans, and we go through life. Life is hard. Things can affect people. So for instance, you can get with somebody today, and for today, everything's fine. Situations can happen. Somebody can go through losses, somebody can go through changes, physically, mentally, that affect them, that affect their mood, that affect how they are, how they think, their hormones. There's a whole heap of things that can happen. There's things that can come left field and affect that person's whole life, and via product, your life as well, and stuff like that. And these things affect the person, can affect the person at the root of who they are, depending on if it's traumatic or whatever happens. Things happen and people get affected. So it's always important to kind of always think about that. And I think with romance as well, love, all of this kind of stuff, marriage, I think it's always quite interesting, because you get married, you have this massive wedding, you have the pictures, you have everyone there, you have the smiles and everything, and everyone's all happy and stuff. But then I always say to my friends, I say, marriage is one of the few things where you celebrate the start. Like when you go to school, you don't celebrate the first day starting school, you celebrate when you graduate. When you go to uni, you celebrate when you've got your degree, when you've actually gone through all the hard work and you've got the degree. Now, of course, marriage is different, because if you wanted to celebrate the end, it's a funeral, and that's not fun. But what I'm saying is that people look to the beginning, which is good. You should celebrate the beginning. Of course, it's a wedding, you found someone you love, that's good. But we should always think about the future, the after part, the life, the mundane part, not the party, the wedding pictures. Yes, it's good to think about that, enjoy your day. But I always say we should always put an emphasis to think about the future, the mundane things, the things of stuff like where you're gonna live, council tax, children. That's a big one. Children can change a relationship. It's all nice when it's just the two of you. You've got money, you're both working or whatever. You've got undivided attention, undivided time. You can enjoy the relationship. You can have kids, and then all of a sudden now you have to have a dependent. Somebody that depends on you for everything. Now your time is not the same. Now physically, it's going to affect both of you, where you're not going to get sleep. You're going to be very sleep deprived. And that's going to be a big issue. You're not going to be in the nicest mood. You might be annoyed at the person you have to look at because you ain't had sleep. The baby's been crying. You might now have to reconsider your career, where you work, what you're doing. You might have to now say you have a career that you love with all your heart, but for you maybe to be a parent and provide childcare or whatever, you might have to reduce the hours or change the career completely if it's really incompatible with what you want to do now as a parent. That can have an effect. That can emotionally affect somebody. And these arguments, things, annoyances, can bubble up and increase along the way, because that is life. You navigate life. So there's all these things where you really have to kind of think to yourself that it's not all roses, and it really shouldn't be, and we shouldn't run away from that. We should actually say how it is, because one of the things I've always realized now is that everyone always wants to talk about the fun part. Everyone always wants to be showing the fun part, the part that looks nice. Rarely do we ever talk about the part that's not nice, the struggles, the challenges, the ugly truth, the ugly mundane part of life, everyday life, love life. It's not all roses. There's challenges. There's times where you may not know how you're going to get through situations. There's times where you're not going to be at your best. There's times that you may have to be holding the flag, holding the table, holding up the table, because maybe the other person might be going through something and they can't hold up the table. And you have to kind of understand that it's a responsibility, it's a job you've taken on. It's not when it's nice, cool. When it gets tough, no. And then I also think that people need to kind of realize that social media is fake, and things that people make a big deal about doesn't matter in real life. Like, do you ever notice, like, people, get married, they take wedding photos and all of that kind of stuff? Yes, you might watch the videos and all that kind of stuff, but that day, the whole day lives on in photographs and videos that you may watch sporadically or whatever. But you still have to go through the normal everyday life. You now have to press ahead with life. Now you actually have to do the work. So once you're married, and now it's you two that have to stare at each other and do life. And I think a lot of people kind of make love this thing where I've been selected and it's all fine, and it's not real. And I think with social media, social media's done a big job of making people think that it's all fairy tales, it's all nice. And then on top of that, if it's getting difficult, if you don't feel good, if it gets tough, that you just give up. And that's not life, that's not reality, because your mum couldn't just give up, your brother can't just give up, your friends don't just give up, they love you. That means the good and the bad. The bad times are when most of us as human beings realize that people are really there for us and they really love us. The good times are not. Whenever you see people talking about this person really loved me, whether it be their spouse, their mum, their dad, their friend, you always hear about when all the chips were down, when life was really bad, this person stayed. This person showed love when it wasn't easy to. If you're only there for the good times, not there for the bad times, you're just a user. On social media, we always have this thing where they say, if it's not serving you, the second it's not serving you, drop it. Or the second it gets hard, drop it. Nowadays, this mantra of dropping it, or just the second there's any hardship, just drop it. In reality, that just never works, because if your parents were to do that, you would say it's a bad parent. If your brother was to do that, you would say they're a bad brother. If your sister was to do that, you would say a bad sister. If your cousin did that, they're a bad cousin. But with love, we think it's any different, when all the systems of love that we've ever seen and experienced have always had hardship with them. They've always had you pouring into somebody even when it wasn't easy to, and also being real with them. Love, I think there's so many different ways to show love. I think there's tough love as well. There's love by strengthening somebody. So if somebody isn't confident in something, or you can see a weakness in somebody, you might have to take that uncomfortable thing in strengthening them for their own good. There's just so many different ways you can love people,